The practice we just did is a representation of the two sides of this practice. We first practice what you might call wisdom. I might call it wisdom. Wisdom is what we're aware of when we don't have opinions. As they say, don't seek truth, just stop having opinions. So when we let go and let go and let go, whatever we experience once we've let go completely is called wisdom. And we've emptied everything out, including emptiness, then there's something there, which isn't a thing, it isn't there, and it isn't is. And that's called wisdom. And then we have the other side of the practice. We have the compassion side, and that's a matter of holding on to our integrity, holding on to happiness, holding on to our relationships, cultivating them, maintaining them, protecting them. To hold on to good things and not bad things is, you could say, if you wanted to have a quick way to talk about it, you can say that that's a way to describe compassion or love. We have wisdom and we have compassion. Letting go and holding on. Letting go of what? Letting go of everything. In particular, letting go of whatever we believe, whatever our latest insight was. We practice and we have an insight. Wisdom is letting go of that. That's what we let go of, our insights, our understandings. That's how we find wisdom. Whatever our perspective is, that's what we let go of. And what we experience when we let go of our perspective is wisdom. To hold on to a certain perspective, a good perspective, a correct and caring perspective, this is compassion. There are very few people, as I've seen in my life, who ever experience true letting go. There are very few people, as I've seen in my life, who ever experience truly holding on to our integrity. To be able to do both is the purpose of this path. That's extraordinarily rare, but extraordinarily beneficial. And to be able to do both isn't actually enough. It's also important to see how they weave together, how they support each other. Only once we, with our lives, demonstrate, once we've personally witnessed, testified to, and then with our lives demonstrated the mutually supportive relationship between wisdom and compassion, then we can talk with authority about this path. Or put another way, to the extent that we've done that, our path is mature. It's not just binary, it's not just yes or no, there are gradations. Nowadays, we have a certain very powerful and very useful worldview that we tend to hold on to. It's something that people refer to as science. And that's actually a vague term, but and it's a term that changes all the time. Science now is different from science even 100 years ago. Radically different. And that's certainly different from, quote, science 500 years ago or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. But in our modern scientific worldview, we often hear something called survival of the fittest. Did you hear about that? It's an interesting term that's mostly connected with biology, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest means that things exist because they have survived. That's what it means. And it's a very interesting concept, and if we pay attention, we see that it's true. That which exists is that which has survived. And that's all. That's the end measure of whether something exists. Things exist that have survived. That's it. Sometimes those are good things, sometimes they're not. The ultimate measure of whether something exists is not whether it's good. The ultimate measure of whether something exists is whether it has survived. So put another way, we all believe certain things. Why? Because those beliefs have survived in our minds. That's why. They've survived for a number of reasons. Some of them may be that they're accurate, but there are a lot of other possible reasons that beliefs have survived. In any case, what we believe, what we see, what we hear, what we feel is what has survived. I wish I had a way of conveying what I just said more powerfully and skillfully. I'm sorry that I don't. Seeing what I just said was one of the very few major turning points in my life. Actually see that what exists is what has survived. That was a major breakthrough in my life, and I've never found a way, as the residents here know. I've tried many times. I don't have a way of explaining it in a way that is compelling. All I can say is that it's the most foundational principle that I know of when it comes to existence. That which survives, survives because it's able to accumulate. Survival is accumulation. Or to put another way, survival is feeding. In order for something to survive, it needs to feed. That which survives feeds on something. And feeding is suffering. So you could say that everything that survives is suffering. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's blunt, but you could say that survival is suffering. And so we want, as long as we live in the world of existence, of survival, it's very important that we make sure that good things survive, that we feed good things. Because we have something, and it's the thing that feeds everything. It's the one thing that at the end of the day feeds everything. And it's our awareness, our attention, our consciousness. That's what feeds everything that exists. Everything that exists exists because it feeds on our awareness. So it's important, as long as we're going to feed things, it's very important that we feed good things, that we feed the right things, that we consistently and intentionally place our awareness in front of good things so that those things will eat it. Because then they'll become strong. And it's important that we not give our awareness to bad things, because then they'll become weak. We'll starve them. To be able to control our awareness in this way is one of the basic principles of this path. It's important that we do that in a way that does, in fact, accumulate. It's important that we give our attention to things such that things accumulate. So we use our attention to feed certain things so that we, for example, create a nonprofit that you could call the Center for Mindful Learning. That exists because it's been fed. It's been fed by attention, by your attention, by my attention. But we've fed it with our attention, and therefore it exists. This Sunday group survives because we pay attention to it, because we place our attention in service of it. We give our attention to it. Here we are, giving our attention to this, and so it exists. We have relationships with each other. Those relationships exist because we feed them with our attention. We can feed a relationship that's negative and damaging with our attention. We can give that a lot of attention and allow it to become very strong. But we don't need to do that. We have control over our attention. This is a great mystery, how that's possible. It may be the deepest mystery. To me, at this point in my life, it's the deepest mystery of all, that we can intentionally give our attention to this or that. That's deeply mysterious to me. But we can. And what we give our attention to has consequences. Things are fed and then they survive, and other things are not and then they die. And we can even use our attention to promote other people's attention, as I'm doing right now. I'm using my attention such that my diaphragm and vocal cords and tongue and lips move in certain ways so that it directs your attention, so that you think certain things and don't think other things. We can impact ourselves and each other in that way, and we can, in that way, control and create the world. And everything in this world that exists because of feeding. Exists because it has fed sufficiently to survive. It's difficult, though, to know what's good and bad. That's not always so easy. So it's important that we have a place to stand that's outside of good and bad. Well, good exists and bad exists. So what we're talking about is a place to stand that's outside of existence. A place that we can stand that's outside of non-existence. And in order to experience that, we come to the point when we don't give our attention to anything. We come to the end of awareness, the end of consciousness, the cessation of consciousness. This is difficult to describe. The Buddha described it as he said, the sun and the moon and the stars do not shine, and yet there is no darkness. There's no light and no darkness. Suffering completely ends. Completely ends. And then we see that suffering was created. Suffering was fed, produced, maintained, but it doesn't need to be. We have that direct experience. And with that direct experience, we no longer need things to be a certain way, because we have a kind of happiness that doesn't depend on things being a certain way. We have a kind of happiness that doesn't depend on any condition. We have what you could call unconditional happiness. When we have unconditional happiness, we no longer have a reason to be biased regarding things of the world. When we no longer have a reason to be biased, we aren't. And then we have a standpoint from which to see good and bad, from which to see benefit and suffering. And that's what we, for example, here at CML are doing. That's what we do here on Sunday evenings. That's what we do the community that lives here maintains a practice. We come to the point of not surviving. We die. So compassion is about living. As they say in the native path, the red road, they say, we do this so the people may live. We also do this so that the people may die. The suffering that exists in the world is the result of the fact that people aren't willing to die. If people were willing to die, then the problems that we have in the world would cease. But we're not willing to die. And so we practice dying. And to practice dying is called meditation. Meditation is to practice dying. We practice it and we get better and better at it. And we discover that to die, to truly die, not to just die with our bodies, to do that's not what I'm talking about at all. But in fact, our bodies come to life when we die. We, you could say, are simply that which obstructs life. So we completely let go of that, whatever it is that obstructs life. And that's what we call dying. But it's also what obstructs death, and so you could call it living. We intentionally and carefully learn how to do both of these. How to feed what's good and not what's bad, and also how to stop feeding and to transcend existence. And we learn how those can work together. And that is, in the end, what we're doing here. We're finding a way that transcendence of life and death will be of use in the world, so that the world will feed it with its attention, so that it survives and continues to benefit the world, and continues to find an end point. We need one single organism, you could say organization, that has ways of receiving food from society, robbing that food from negative societal trends, societal patterns, using that food then to create an environment in which we pass away, in which we transcend ourselves. And in transcending ourselves, we become more able to create something that the world needs and wants: freedom. And so, food is given to that organization such that that organization passes away. This is very, very subtle. It's done. It's done in cultures around the world, but it is rare. it's a very subtle skill. The ability to survive in order to die, and to die in order to survive. This is very, very subtle. But it is the purpose of what we're doing here. And it is, to the best of my knowledge, the solution. This is the solution. I don't know how to do it enough. I don't know how to do it enough to make this organization as big as it should be. It should be huge. We should have billions or trillions of dollars of profit every year. That's what we should have. We ought to. It would be good if we had that, and if we robbed that money from other organizations. If we took it, if it was removed from feeding those organizations. Because money is simply a very specific kind of attention. Money is in our society trust. That's what money is for us. Money is our way of expressing trust. When we give our money to something or someone, that's a statement. I trust you. I trust you to do what's in my benefit or the benefit of the world. And trust is a very specific kind of attention. So it would be good if we had a lot of that kind of attention, a lot of trust, which for us means, in our world, means money. That would be good. And it would be good if we could use that then to find more and more effective ways of dying, of passing away, of transcending our own desires, our own need to survive, our own selfishness, our own self-centeredness. That would be good if we had better and better ways of doing that. And everything that we do here is done in order to create the pattern, the structure that I've described, a structure that transcends structure, a structure that transcends structure, the transcendence of structure that structures society. This is what we're creating. I have been working very hard from when I was quite young to find something that, in fact, could make a difference in the world. And I want to change the history of the world. I want to, in fact, change the history of the world more than anyone else ever has. I want to have a greater positive influence on our history than has ever been accomplished before. So it's important to pay very close attention to how that can be done most effectively. What I just described is what I see from my various experiences as the most effective way to make a difference. To find a way to actually accomplish that is what we're doing each day. And in fact, we are doing it because, in fact, here we are. We are surviving. And we are doing it because there we went. We're different people now from who we were when we came in. We did die in some way to some degree in the past hour and a half. So it's happening. The question is, how can we totally give ourselves to this so that it's done skillfully and completely? I deeply care for life, for all living things. To completely give ourselves to that is possible when we completely let go. But just because we let go doesn't mean that we have given ourselves to that. There's more to be done than that. What needs to be done? We need a structure, something that exists and serves in the world, that exerts control over our future. That's what we have the opportunity to create together. And that's the purpose of this organization. That's why we are giving our lives to it, so that it will end our lives in a way that saves all lives. Thank you for being a